Welcome back to Mind Your Biz. My name is Seth, and in today's privacy chat, I have the distinct privilege. Finally, it's taken some time. We've talked about this for a while. I think maybe on and off for like 6 months. Finally, had the privilege of bringing on one of the co-founders of the Shade Protocol, and you may have heard of their stablecoin Silk or their stable store of value Silk, Carter Wetzel. Carter, welcome to Mind Your Biz.
Thanks for having me on, Seth. Super excited to chat here today.
Yeah, no, it's me too. Like we've had we've got plenty of mutual connections, plenty of ambassadors in your community who've reached out to me for quite some time and said, Seth, you got to shill this. And I'm like, well, I feel like we can do better than that. Why don't we just talk to Carter and have him, instead of like shilling, explain to us some of the fundamental problems that Shade Protocol seeks to solve. But first, my audience doesn't know you very well. Tell us about Carter.
100%. So I've been in crypto since 2017. It's been a 6-year journey. The first 3 years was spent writing and researching a book called Building Confidence in Blockchain. During those 3 years, it was super apparent that crypto is lacking data privacy and that if DeFi wants to truly scale, there's going to have to be some sort of data encryption. And so in 2020, I helped write the Secret Network white paper working with those core developers. And in 2021, split off and got a group of developers to actually build on top of that tech stack, build apps that would actually reach consumers. That's been a 2-year journey, and that brings us to where we are today, 6 years later. Started as a educator, community person, and now I'm a builder.
That's amazing. I think that's kind of the progression that most of us want to see in an industry, is that somebody eventually takes those steps towards becoming an elder statesman. And it sounds like you're on that path. And I mean, there is no traditional like timeline for it, but it's great to know that after you saw a problem, you realized that you had a moral obligation to go try to solve it. So let's talk a little bit about your former life before getting involved in writing that book. I mean, you identified gaps as you were writing and as you were researching for that book, but who was Carter before crypto, before you ever had any exposure to this at all?
100%. So before exposure to crypto, I did embedded software engineering. So it was definitely aware of a lot of the scalability problems tied to hardware and how that overlaps into Web3. Like I loosely had heard about it. But yeah, I was largely just a software engineer that also had a finance background. I also had a degree in finance. So I'm able to kind of straddle both worlds of computer science and finance. And then I had a cousin in TradFi reach out to me and say, hey, like there's this interesting stuff. I know you're a computer science guy. I know you're a finance guy. I think this industry, this blockchain thing might be something that would be of interest to you. And I remember the day it was a boring day at work when I got this message from my cousin over LinkedIn, clicked on it, and like 3 hours just went by of just reading as much as I could. And to close the story out, I was reading because I'm someone that just goes all in, and suddenly I had 50 pages of notes. And I'm like, wait a second, like, am I writing a book right now? What is this thing? And that's what kicked off the 3-year writing journey.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, as far as like extrapolating to some of your notes, depending on people's, sort of appetite for length in a book, I mean, you could have just added diagrams and called it a day, probably at that point, depending on your audience. That's amazing. First off, I think it's kind of unique to have a bit of that finance background the way that you do. I don't think as many people who get involved in architecting the tech stack for different projects in cryptocurrency have that sort of background or are informed by truly understanding finance, or even just accounting, let alone like the broader topic of economics, right? And large scale economics. And it sounds like you kind of already had that going for you.
100%. I mean, DeFi, you can't escape assets and liabilities as a paradigm, right? And so as much as Web3 and DeFi likes to think that it's separate from traditional finance, it's like there's principles embedded into finance that and economics that you just can't escape, that you have to adhere to, these ideas of solvency, right? So it definitely helped prepare me to jump into learning about stable coins, learning about decentralized exchanges, and what it would mean to actually look at a protocol and be like, that isn't sound mechanics, and that is sound mechanics, right? And if you don't have that finance background, you don't necessarily have the principles to be able to kind of sift through the noise.
Got it. Yeah, I know. Sorry, a little anecdote from my life too. I think a lot of my closest circle at the time that I discovered cryptocurrency had sort of all become Ron Paulites, right? It's back when we thought maybe he stood a chance, right? 2006, 2007. I mean, I'm dating myself a little bit, but back then we were like, hey, this guy, who knows? Maybe he can make this work. And his message was consistent his track record was so crystal clear for 30 years plus, talking about the evils of the Fed and runaway money printing, the fact that the Fed is causing inflation, that's actually part of the program, right? That it is programmatically determined in response to markets, and how on the one side, maybe some would consider that that's a responsible thing to do for a larger population, and others would say, no, you're stealing from those who need it most, or those who merit it the most, right? Who earned the most. You're stealing their buying power. So a lot of us, from my circle of friends, without that like more traditional and thorough background in having studied, right, in an institution of higher learning, we just kind of, for whatever reason, that resonated with us. We were like, yeah, you know what, we should audit the Fed. We should, bare minimum, we should audit them. I mean, what's the harm? Like, what do they have to hide? So I totally get that for somebody like you who really has that deeper education, that you're like, yeah, no, there are inherent problems. I've been living with this. Like, it keeps me up at night. I've been living with this for years. So that's amazing. But let's talk about the point of no return for you. And I think you already brought it up as far as like gathering the notes from your reading. What was the point of no return where you realized, oh my God, crypto has left an indelible mark on me. I really can't go back. Like, there is no return to normal life after this. How did that happen for you?
Oh man, honestly, it came through conversations with people that didn't understand the attributes. I found myself like evangelizing essentially to people around me, and there was enough conversations of people that didn't get it, that drove me to be like, they had criticisms like, okay, it's cool, but like, how do I actually use it? How does this actually impact my everyday life? And it's like, the criticisms kind of pushed me to realize, wow, like, blockchain is this really strong concept and offers these really strong promises of censorship resistant and like global accessibility. But like, if my friend can't get there in 4 clicks, then maybe there is something wrong with this industry, and maybe there's something I can do about it. So I would say that was around 2020 and 2021, where it was just, I love this technology, but it needs to be a lot better than it is. And that's the beauty of an emerging industry, is like, you can actually elicit a change in it. You can actually poke the fabric of reality, and something else will pop out the other side if you put your heart and soul into it. And that's where the journey has brought us today, is actually building and actually trying to have beautiful UI UX and actually be part of this movement of bringing crypto to everyday folks in a meaningful way.
That's amazing. Okay, so it sounds like you kind of did it for the guy next to you in a way. It wasn't even just for you. It was that was what it sounds like. It was much more ideologically driven, much more philosophically driven, where you realized that you had close friends and associates, and I mean, it was your cousin, for crying out loud, that reached out to you in the first place. Yep. And it sounds like you started to think about that sort of responding in kind, like, how do you make it accessible for somebody else, right? And keep that chain unbroken, right? Or keep it growing. That's amazing. Let's talk about Shade now. And if it's all right, I'm going to pull up a visual aid. We will bring the main Shade Protocol website here and throw it on screen for the benefit of the audience who's watching. If you're listening in podcast style, we're at shadeprotocol.io right now. But talk to me about what we're seeing here, Carter.
100%. So the vision of Shade Protocol emerges from a very simple thing, and it's that privacy is a human right. If you go back to Netscape and some of the earliest encryption technology that emerged, it was actually to protect consumer data. And so in DeFi, we kind of entered into this world where we said, hey, 100% total transparency is like a super strong feature. And in some situations it is, but fundamentally there's great risks to totally transparent DeFi. And I'll list a couple of them out for you. One of them is your balances are completely publicly visible. So if one day when we have credit cards integrated to it, like with crypto and blockchain, if you go swipe your card and the person on the other side has a block explorer, they can know if you're a millionaire, right? Like that's a security risk. Trading strategies. Imagine you're someone that's come up with incredibly creative DeFi alpha and strategies, and and everyone can just copycat trade you because you're totally publicly visible. Front running. You're a retail user. You go and buy something. Someone sandwich attacks you and actually extracts value. You get less of what you were supposed to get because these mempools are totally publicly visible and people can front run that.
Yeah, no, you bring up, sorry for the interruption, bring up that example. I can't imagine using crypto at the point of sale and having Jared from Subway actually interfere with my purchase at Subway trying to buy a real sandwich like IRL. But to your point, that's a reality in crypto and in DeFi.
100% a reality. And there's other examples too, like lending. People put up, tens of millions of dollars, or if you're a small retail user, thousands of dollars, hundreds of dollars, and your liquidation price point is publicly visible. So a programmatic actor can come in, shift LP pools, try to impact oracles, and cause cascading liquidations that guarantees them profit. And imagine I'm a business and I want to pay my employees or a contractor on chain. I don't want the whole world to know how much money I'm paying these people, right? I want to preserve their privacy. And so as an industry, people are saying, total transparency good and any amount of privacy is bad, but I don't think that's the case. I think the future of DeFi will involve selective privacy, where you have transparency for public goods, but then individuals will have privacy tied to their DeFi positions. And so that's what Shade Protocol is. It's this suite of applications that protects your DeFi metadata, that protects some of your transactional metadata. And we're hoping to, onboard as many DeFi users into this suite. And one day our flagship product, Silk, the stablecoin, that's privacy preserving. We want to get it integrated into e-commerce and have an alternative to the US dollar on blockchain.
That is amazing. And I know that from one of the trade shows, it might've been Decentral in Miami, the one attached to Art Basel last year. I think your team handed off a Silk enamel coin. You had some really great tchotchkes for the event. Nope. So I've got somewhere back here on the display. I don't know. I'm sorry, I can't pinpoint exactly where that is, but that's a beautiful vision. I think what you're saying about the transparency from larger institutions, certainly from government institutions, I think most of us would prefer that. And it seems like in terms of at least the early, it's not interpretation. I mean, the early writings of Satoshi, not strictly in the white paper, but also in the listserv that Satoshi sent out those initial requests for feedback, right? And the early message boards, right, for that what would become Bitcoin Talk. Satoshi was very, very blunt about that. How the whole thing was a reaction to the fact that governments are way too used to running shadow budgets. And I mean, for crying out loud, the federal government of the United States has admitted that they've lost $2 trillion, like just poof, vanished, disappeared, gone from budgets. Like what was that, Building 7 of the World Trade Center? Like that conveniently where those records are kept, just gone. We'll never know what happened there. But if had all that been stored on a blockchain, we'd have an indelible record. We would know for sure what would happen to some of those budgets. Now, some would say it's a question of national security. We cannot allow some of those budgets to be fully opaque, or transparent rather. So maybe there's a need for conditional privacy in certain government applications, but I think most of us who are kind of like ideologically driven in crypto agree with that, with what you laid out there. We want more transparency from those who ask us for taxes. Great, cool. You want taxes from us? Prove that they are warranted. I mean, those are fundamental tenets of the formation of this country, right? No taxation without representation. Represent what you're going to do with those funds. I don't know what it would take to get the federal government to agree to that, but certainly I love the idea of what you're building and the way that you're positing, right, that problem that you want to solve. So you asked me to open up the Shade app right before we got started recording. Can you tell us a little bit about, like, this is the front end, right, of the app itself? Give us a brief walkthrough here. What's unique about this? What aspect of the problem of privacy does this help solve?
100%. So we'll start with Silk, which is the page we're on. So Silk is a privacy preserving stablecoin, which means you can send it from A to B and you have privacy for your metadata. What's really interesting though about Shade Protocol and the tech stack we're built on is that you can actually decrypt your own transactions. And so you could hand off a transaction history to an auditor or to like a tax specialist, right? So even though there's privacy, there's still a straight line path to compliance, but the key is sovereignty, right? You're not compelled to reveal that information. It's your choice, your decision to do that. But besides the privacy, what's also unique about Silk is it's not pegged to the US dollar. So in DeFi, there's this super strong dependency on tracking just the US dollar. And so Silk is this over collateralized stablecoin. It uses the MakerDAO model, which is tried and true. That's considered like a DeFi blue chip at this point. But instead of tracking $1, it actually tracks a basket. It tracks the Canadian dollar, the US dollar, the Japanese yen, Bitcoin, euro, and gold. So it creates this really unique inflation hedge and volatility hedge. And actually, if the US dollar hyperinflates, Shade Protocol governance is capable of evolving the basket. And so the weightage tied to the US dollar could go down to zero, and the Bitcoin could increase how much of the peg is tracking Bitcoin or gold. So it's capable of evolving the macro environment. And I think so much of DeFi with the US dollar stablecoins are not prepared of how bad things could get. And now we're tying the future of decentralized finance to the US dollar, to a centralized entity that this world of decentralization has no control over. So we're trying to create unstoppable finance. We're trying to create a stable currency capable of evolving no matter what the conditions.
That's amazing. And what kind of collateral is accepted on in the app right now in order to collateralize the minting of fresh Silk tokens?
100%. So we have assets like Atom, assets like Secret, which is the layer one that we're built on top of, assets like Osmo, which is the largest decentralized exchange in Cosmos. And we're going to be looking to add in things like ETH and Bitcoin as well as collateral backing. Actually, I suppose I can leak a little alpha here because I always like to leak alpha. Probably in 2 to 3 weeks, those will be added to what can be minted out. So that's going to be super fun.
Okay, so oh man, okay, so I'm on a publishing schedule here, and there's a very strong likelihood that this will be released just before that goes live. Ooh. So yeah, so early alpha. I hope we'll see if I can push the publishing schedule to get this public a little bit earlier, because that sounds juicy. If I can ask just a little more detail, knowing that we've got a delay in publishing here, are we looking at like genuine UTXO inbound rails for the Bitcoin minting? Like, is it native to Bitcoin is what I'm asking.
That's a great question. So initially, no, which is why the vault specifically for Bitcoin will be quite small. There's a Cosmos project called Nomic. I don't know if you're aware of them, but they're working on creating kind of a Bitcoin bridge that's much more, I think, UTXO native to Cosmos. And that would give us access to a better version of Bitcoin. We also have a potential bridge project we're working on. It used to be called Shinobi, and they were going to have a direct bridge from Bitcoin to the network that we're on. But they ended up not being able to finish the project, but it was open source. So there's a chance we bring that to the finish line too. So TLDR, no native UTXO Bitcoin yet, but we'd like to get much safer versions than WBTC. But for now, that's the starting point.
Okay, I'm very happy to hear you say that, because WBTC, those who are aware that the ticker symbol WBTC on Ethereum, natively minted, it's quite centralized. There are admin keys. They can remotely shut down wallet balances. They can freeze your funds and some other issues. It's a bit of it's a little bit of a systemic risk that MakerDAO faces with the DAI token and USDC right now. The fact that if at any given point Circle just decides that they have a problem with the wallet balance of Maker, that they can freeze that amount of collateral that backs up the DAI stable token. So that kind of systemic risk it is extended in a similar token paradigm like WBTC. So great to hear that you've got plans to overcome that down the line, and it sounds like you're going to chase that all the way down. And the other thing that is exciting to me about hearing that you want to create those UTXO inbound rails for collateral is that, I mean, you don't need me to tell you, as soon as you get it working for Bitcoin, you got it working for Doge. There's a rabid Doge fan base out there, and the market cap is sizable. You could mint a lot of stables with all the Doge that's out there.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge problem, the UTXO to some of these different other blockchains. And yeah, specifically We definitely like WETH better, of course, compared to WBTC, because that's actually just, a smart contract wrapping it for that accessibility. But yeah, we want Silk over the long haul to have 100% decentralized collateral. We actually we had a forum post called Operation Touch and Go that talks about kind of bringing any sort of centralized collateral down to 0% over the course of 5 years. So there is like that interesting balance of growth versus stability and security. And eventually this 5-year plan will bring it down to essentially being security and decentralization maximalists, balancing a little bit with growth on the front end of the project's lifespan.
That's awesome. Okay, so that tells me a few things that we definitely need to know as far as building confidence in the protocol and building confidence in what you're building. Let's talk a little more about the app. I apologize. I did a little sidebar, kind of diving down the rabbit hole of Bitcoin and Doge. These are just heavy market caps, right? Heavy bags that could be unloaded as collateral. So for me, it's naturally interesting. But tell us more about the app.
Yeah, let's go to the bridge page. So on the bridge page here, so we're built in the Cosmos, and so there's this bridging protocol called IBC that connects all these different Cosmos blockchains. And one of the unique things is that this bridge page is actually a public good. We don't make it so that you just have to bridge assets on the Secret network, which is where Shade Protocol is built. We allow you to bridge anywhere to anywhere. It's total public good. We actually have thousands of users that use this bridge page every day, and it leverages IBC. And actually, you'll notice Ethereum, if you click on Ethereum Secret Network, this was just added less than 48 hours ago. So you're able to bridge in ETH and BTC and wrap them into their privacy preserving versions, and then start using them on ShadeSwap. So on the swap page, if you go over here now, and we'll be adding support for other.
I apologize. I had the Kepler 2.0 upgrade pop up hit me, and it wasn't visible on screen, but I haven't upgraded just yet because I'm so heavy in EVM DeFi at the moment that I've got to get to that. But big fan of Kepler. So
100%. And if you click on swap here, well, I'll show you just the swap page, and we could probably we'll keep on the shorter side of things. So this is punch in. Let's go like 5 atom for Shade. We'll just show you kind of the power of ShadeSwap. So and then click on the little gear icon too. So this is probably this impressive part.
Whoa.
So we have a very impressive routing contract that makes sure users get their the best possible trade. There's 20 plus pairs on ShadeSwap right now, and it optimizes to make sure that you get the best trade. There's a stable swap. So if you're familiar with Curve, ShadeSwap actually has a privacy preserving Curve, like same as Curve, right? But it's privacy preserving. There's also constant product pools, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And there's also something called asymmetric concentrated liquidity for anyone trading from L1 tokens to staking derivatives. So not only do we have privacy, but we've also innovated and made sure that the DeFi products are actually meaningfully good. And if you want to click on the pools page here, we can show you all the different liquidity providing opportunities. So, and yeah, this is a first of its kind, like privacy preserving DeFi. There's been transactional privacy, but this is the first cohesive DeFi suite with privacy ever in crypto history, to my knowledge. So this is like, and there's TVL here. Like we're early stages. If you go to the
this is the part where like just you can't say it, but I can. Where this is, guys, why would you be on Osmosis when you can do this privately? I can say that. I don't know if you feel comfortable. I don't think it's part of your messaging, but I have no problem saying it that way.
I mean, yeah, you said it, not me. It's 100% front running resistant, private token balances, private trades, right? If you click on the dashboard, you can see just how much growth we've seen. We're actually at 8.3 million in TVL on the DEX, which is pretty good. And then Silk itself has over $6.5 million worth of collateral. So this whole platform has 15 million in TVL within the first month. So private DeFi is a thesis. Yeah, that's the reaction. That's like a big deal. And so we're not huge on like the marketing, and people don't necessarily like, I don't think we're on the radar yet, but 15 million in TVL in 1 month in the bottom of a bear, I think speaks to that there is an appetite for privacy preserving DeFi.
100%. Yeah. If the value proposition is there, if it's sound, then it's self-evident, right? It's self-evident to people who are already involved in DeFi in that ecosystem, right? So I'm going to rewind a little bit. You mentioned IBC as a transfer protocol, inter-blockchain communication. For my audience, they should already be aware of it because I bring this up frequently, but it's a primitive of the sort of Cosmos Hub ecosystem. the architecture of Cosmos and Tendermint. That was the whole value proposition when they first launched years ago with the white paper. Gosh, when 2018. So we've been tracking this just a little bit as a primitive. It's very powerful to have atomic swaps built into an ecosystem like this, and it's why I think IBC it should be giving all of the EVM chains a run for the money. So if people, bare minimum, if they already have value locked into this IBC ecosystem, yeah, making it private and making it front running resistant, those are self-evident features. The value that it's being offered there is so great that anybody who becomes aware of it, in my opinion, would be crazy not to pursue that over the alternatives. So
and then it becomes a game of liquidity, right? Because I think the main argument against is like, well, you guys don't have the liquidity. But if we go from being a 15 million TVL protocol to say $250 million, I just like to think that like once you join Shade DeFi, like why would you go back, right? Because privacy is such a strong attribute, and it's a protection, it's a security for the users. Whether you're a small user or a whale, privacy doesn't care about that. It's equitable, right? It's in the world of transparent DeFi, if you're a programmatic actor, you have a massive advantage over someone that's not on a command line, that knows Linux, that has all these scripts to try to protect themselves, right? So privacy is fair, privacy is equitable, and that's why I think in hindsight, 10 years from now, people will look back on current DeFi and be like, why did we think it was a good idea to have totally transparent DeFi? Why did we think that was going to fly? There will be the HTTPS of DeFi, and I think Shade Protocol was the first, or if not one of the first, to realize that vision long before it was even technically possible. But we were stubborn, right? We sat around and we're like, we're going to build it on this tech stack. We can't do it anywhere else. It's painful, but we're going to do it. And now it's just a matter of improving the UI UX, continuing to harden the privacy, and build it and they will come. Doesn't usually work, but maybe with privacy, we just need to see enough traction that people make the jump.
Yeah, well, built-in incentives are part of that equation, right? Of if you build it, they will come. Like if you have incentives, then and they're strong enough, then yeah, of course, people will come. It's not a question of just like, okay, well, it's an enjoyable thing that is not unique, right? In this vertical, but no, this is genuinely unique. That said, I'm gonna ask a couple of things from the competitive landscape standpoint. There's a lot of buzz in the EVM world right now about ZK-EVMs, right? And there are a couple of products that are positioning zero knowledge EVMs as sort of a bit of a hollaback to what you're doing here, a bit of a call and return exercise. That is the EVM's answer to privacy right now. Are you well read enough to offer some high level comparison points to compare and contrast between some of the ZK-EVM offerings in, well, maybe really more Polygon than Ethereum, but what is the response there? I mean, you're not trying to at first address the liquidity that's locked on the EVM. You're first starting in your own backyard, IBC, but do you know how it compares?
For sure. So it's interesting because the origin of a lot of ZK snarks and zero knowledge proofs was tied to scalability. But as kind of time went on, there's zero knowledge proofs are great for like a single data field. Like, is the number, can I check if the number is 10 or 15 without revealing the number, right? Stuff like that. So the biggest difference between those ecosystems and our ecosystems is the flexibility of what you can build. So at the end of the day, we have generalized privacy preserving computations because of the tech stack we're on. So that means our smart contracts, everything we have like total granular control over like every single component of the smart contract of what is and isn't encrypted, versus kind of these zero knowledge proof frameworks. Like they're very rigid, and they have to be by design because it's really focused on kind of rolling things up as a scalability and speed solution. But then also, wait a second, we can kind of use this for some privacy components. But generalized privacy preserving computations allow you to build anything, right? Will zero knowledge proofs expand out to be more flexible? I'm sure they will over time. And so I'm a firm believer in the pluralism of privacy solutions. Our whole industry needs more privacy. So if someone can make a very rich set of tools to build privacy preserving DeFi with zero knowledge proofs, first off, I wish them luck, because that flexibility, by extension of what zero knowledge proofs are, is very, very, very difficult. But if they do that, I'll be cheering them on. And
Yeah.
as a whole, it means there'll be more attention on the privacy thesis, right? And we're already well positioned within that thesis to do super well. So I'm a fan of privacy tech wherever it is in crypto. We need more of it, and it will be obvious in hindsight.
Got it. Yeah. It seems like with zero knowledge proofs in particular, like ZK snarks, they've been computationally expensive, so to speak, till now. With ZK rollups and ZK EVMs, I guess there's been a better economy of scale to make that more accessible without it taking a particularly burdensome amount of time, or having it be like server side computation for some of those proofs. So pardon my ignorance, I'm not as well read on the absolute state of ZK snarks versus ZK starks versus what can be feasibly delivered at scale at reasonable costs. I just know that people are really excited about ZK-EVM.
Yep.
I don't know where the TVL is as of the time of recording or when we release this. Well,
yeah, there isn't even really. So I was just at a conference not too long ago in Denver, and there was a whole ZK event, and I think narratives.
I think we missed that on a panel between me and Tor Bear at the podcasting area. I think we were trying to arrange it back then at ETH Denver.
Yep. Oh, that's amazing. That's we missed it slightly. But what I will say at that event is I think narratives tend to front run the reality of where the tech stacks are at any given moment. And so I think the apps that actually get built on top of zero knowledge proofs and a lot of this ZK-EVM stuff there's going to be a lag there. There was even a VC panel where they're like, everyone's talking about ZK-EVM, but there's maybe like 2 apps that are even on a test net that maybe can interact with like the stuff. So I'm kind of waiting around. I'm guessing in 2024, we'll actually start to reap the benefits of this narrative hype around it. The other big thing that's being solved for is like the decentralization problem, right? A lot of these roll-ups and how they get packaged and relayed and actually shuttled back and forth between off-chain to on-chain. There's like really big centralization like risks that also are going to have to be solved. So it's like, okay, great. Maybe you do get privacy and scalability, but if the solution has a lot of centralization risks, then that's an attribute we have to solve for. And it's a big game of trade-offs. And as a whole, it's narratives outrun reality, but I hope that it can manifest into something as great as the energy that's around it.
Yeah, no, totally agreed. I love what you brought up about a plurality of solutions for privacy, and I totally agree. Super important. ZK snarks have, I wouldn't say their best days are behind them, because clearly we are finding ways to scale, and maybe they may not have the flexibility of application, but sometimes it's okay to have a very narrow computation solution. We're finding that's the case with like proof of work hashing. For Bitcoin anyway, right? Like that scaling. I mean, yes, some argue that it's wasteful, but on the other hand, like it's great. The permission, we know that it's permissionless now. We know that it's censorship resistant now because of that massive hash rate. So, like it or love it, you can't really hate proof of work. If you do, like we can have another episode and talk about that. If
you hate proof of work, you're not a historian. Let me put it that way.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. The fact that we have other solutions doesn't negate the fact that there are other solutions, like the previous solutions still work. Mm-hmm. So having some of those like narrow solutions with certain technologies, probably okay. I mean, you just have to be mindful of how you use them, and sometimes really small adjustments to those narrow computation like applications, sometimes just really subtle changes to those protocols can yield really big benefits or new, like very amazing novel applications. Like one case in point, Taproot. Nobody foresaw that the Taproot upgrade in Bitcoin would introduce the possibility of ordinals and inscriptions on Bitcoin. It's all this fresh liquidity, all this fresh capital that's flowing into Bitcoin. And you have people who are protocol maximalists saying, well, no, we needed to stay rigid and we wanted ossification. No, we need these standards to become legacy. We can never change. It's like, well, but what if you do change, and what if that's healthy for the environment, for onboarding? And in the case of what you're saying with the plurality of privacy solutions, I think, yeah, innovation should be welcome, right? Like wherever we can get it. Let's talk just a little bit about the privacy assumptions of building on secret network and for shade protocol. You mentioned that what you're doing is more general computational privacy, and I think it bears mentioning that the broad distinction of privacy solution that's being used in the secret network is HSM, right? It is hardware based security, right? So server side hardware based security, I think, unless I'm mistaken.
Yes. So essentially, the way this works is that there is a private seed that lives across all the different validator nodes on the network. And so when computations happen, they happen inside of this encrypted environment. So state gets updated in this encrypted environment, and output gets spat out, and all the nodes compare their outputs and make sure that they computed the same thing, right? And that's kind of the validation process. And that was V1 of privacy back in 2020, 2021. And now as we've approached 2023, we're actually heading towards kind of having threshold level encryption. So it's not enough just to break one machine, like and take the private key, and suddenly you can see everyone's data. Instead, it would be like you have to break you have to collude with the majority of the nodes on the network. Like not only do you have to have a hardware level exploit, you have to collude across the majority of the validator set. And then the even better end game is to include fully homomorphic encryption tied to this stuff. So TLDR, hybrid solutions are the best. Pure hardware level solutions, really good for scalability, really good for generalization, has some security assumptions, and we're improving those security assumptions as time goes on.
And that's phenomenal. I wasn't able to release the panel interview that I did with Tor, unfortunately, because the podcasting area of ETH Denver had a massive hardware failure. Fancy that. They literally muted his mic during our recording that we couldn't tell. So, but I got some answers about that straight from the horse's mouth about this desire to diversify the security paradigm, right? Get additional protocols in place, and moving towards fully homomorphic encryption. But just also to bring some of the history to light for the audience's benefit. We'll try to wrap up pretty soon, but with hardware only security, Intel SGX just exploited in I wouldn't say in spectacular fashion, but it became a known exploit. And so that, I mean, to all the team's credit across Secret Network and Shade Protocol and everybody building in that ecosystem, everybody took that seriously and said, "Oh, there you go. We had an exploit. We have to build more. Like we have to build better assurances for people who think that we're private." Though I don't know that it was proven that the Intel SGX issue caused any problems in the Secret Network or anybody building on it. I mean, this is your opportunity to responsibly disclose if there were, but I don't think.
Yeah, to my knowledge, the potential exploit was only possible on like 3% of the nodes on the network. And what's really interesting is really the research group behind it. It was actually a set of 5 universities from Australia, Tel Aviv, and then 3, at least 2 of them were Ivy Leagues, I think, in the United States. So it's a set of like 5 institutions that chose to study Secret Network since 2021. So they spent 2 years trying to essentially crack Secret, find an exploit. And to their credit, they finally did. And it was on an unpatched Intel piece that, they found, wait a second, we actually can provably do this on Secret Network. So the really beautiful net result of that is we have really good relationships with the researchers. I think the Secret Network is very focused on kind of being an engineering live in production solution before anyone else. And in fairness, really is still the only serious, like generalized privacy preserving smart contract platform. But I think it really woke us back up to focusing on the security posture. And I think now there's significant R&D from the L1 team being put on that. There was multiple patches that were added in. There was even an upgrade to the token standard. So if you can picture this like ERC20s being upgraded to like ERC21s, if that was like a thing, right? So there was actually a token migration to improve the token standard, potential security assumptions too. And we actually, on our webpage, have the migrate page, which is actually helping facilitate thousands of users migrate to a more improved privacy preserving standard. So security is always a moving target. You never get to stop. And so anyone who's like a purist in the world of privacy, it just means that they believe they have the best security assumptions as of this precise movement. But there's always going to be a team of, red team versus blue team. You never get to rest on your laurels. And it's our job to continue to improve the security period into perpetuity.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, man. And I appreciate you going a little further out of your way to address that. this is my first public interview with anybody from the ecosystem, right? Because of that issue with the recording with Tor. So I appreciate you covering that ground as well, because it is a foundation that you're built on. So thank you for that. Let me ask you about, just more broadly speaking, high level, what are some big wins and milestones that you feel proud of, having worked on Shade Protocol?
Wow, that's such a cool question. I think the first piece is Silk. If you go to the Silk page, we have 3.5 million Silk. That went up 200,000 today, I think, actually. So we're at 3.5 million Silk in circulation, which is like, that's the largest stablecoin in Cosmos. So there's been multiple other decentralized stablecoin projects that launched. And I know 3.6 million in TVL is very, very small, but 2 years ago I remember 3 a.m. in the morning, I was lying on my bed being like, what should we name this stablecoin? What should we name this currency that's like potentially unstoppable? And having the name like Silk kind of pop into my head, and now like, wow, like this thing is real. People are using it, and this has the potential to like change the world over the course of the next 10 years. It's surreal to actually see it out there in live. I think the other thing I'm proud of too is the team and the community. The team that's built Shade Protocol, which, yeah, there's no team listed on here. Haha, privacy. Makes sense. Right. Although a lot of us are pretty doxed though, but we've had 100% retention rate on the team since 2021. So we've had 0 turnover on the core team, which within the world of crypto, I think that's something to be super proud of. It shows that there's an alignment on ethos. There's a steady improvement of skill tied to development. And like the community too, they survived the Luna crash with us. There's a lot of folks that believed in UST that now believe in Silk, and a decentralized world needs truly decentralized money. That was the vision of UST, and I was there. I got to meet a lot of those folks, and I really think that Silk is the spiritual, mature successor to UST, but even better because it has privacy and it's not pegged to the dollar and it's over collateralized. So let's see where it goes.
That's amazing. And you're also not offering unrealistic yield in exchange for parking your collateral. So yeah, imagine that. It might actually be sustainable because you're not offering unrealistic financial products. Amazing. So that's great. Being able to attract and maintain top quality talent. I mean, in the traditional tech startup world, that makes you highly investable. In this case, I mean, you could have definitely gone and begged VCs for enough capital to go and back your first 10 or 15 million of stables on your own. But to see that organic uptake, like you're saying, if that's been contributed by the community, then you've got proof of, you validated all of your assumptions about whether or not it's a product people care for. So that's amazing. Really kudos. Let's talk a little bit about some upcoming dates that you have. What are things you're excited about that are upcoming? You already mentioned one thing earlier, but anything else that you're excited about that we could be public about on this interview?
I was going to say, if this is going to go out in 2 weeks, or 1 to 2 weeks, and I'll say this. So Shade Staking is going to be going live, as is the final 70% of the airdrop. So this has been 2 years in the making. We had this very patient theory that the final part of the airdrop should exist once the main product flywheel is there. So, all these people to do an airdrop, you show up to a website and it's like, well, what can I do with the token? What is the platform? And they're like, well, we're building it. Please stick around, right? We did it a little differently. We had our snapshots back in, it was November 7th to December 13th of 2021 for Cosmos stakers, Luna stakers, or Luna Classic, right? So this is, if you're a Luna Classic person that got wrecked, like, the Shade, you probably have an airdrop waiting for you. And then to Secret Network was the 3 communities. And so now this final 70% is going out to all those folks. And that's a huge deal to actually to bring everyone back 2 years later and say, come look what's been built since you first claimed your airdrop in early 2022. We actually delivered everything you saw in that initial video. Because like when you claim it, you have to watch a video. It's like, everything we said we were going to do, we actually went and did it. And so, like, join us, come hand in hand, become a staker, start participating in protocol shared fees with stakers. And who knows where that's going to take us. That's
amazing. Okay, so I mean, yeah, clearly a lot to feel good about there as far as the past accomplishments, and then now the stuff that's upcoming. You can prove it to the community that was loyal and like you said, got involved from those other communities, especially bringing people in from the Luna Classic fold. they're always eager for good news, right? After having gotten royally wrecked. So that's amazing. Let's finish off with a couple of questions. One, this is extremely important. I'm dead serious here. Did I ask you for a bounty to set up this interview?
No, not at all. You responded to like me making a partially sarcastic tweet about how difficult it is to be a builder, and that's what set up the interview.
Awesome. And had we been able to coordinate better at ETH Denver, I can guarantee you would have been on that panel with Tor and myself. So the door is always open. If I have a megaphone in this space, if I've got like whatever, any kind of influence or any kind of ability to bring an audience, that door is always open when the mission is clearly privacy. Because I agree with you, like we're totally aligned with that worldview. We need more privacy solutions, and we are running out of time before authoritarians try to make blockchain into sort of a dystopian nightmare. Right? People thought that all these blockchain solutions and cryptocurrency solutions were meant to help them be more sovereign, and in many cases, they are actually turning into they'll turn into something of a gilded cage for us. So yeah, that's why it's so important to me. Ideologically, been doing this since 2018, offering a free microphone to anybody who's focused on a privacy solution, or bare minimum is committed to working in the free and open source software movement, which can then lends itself well to building privacy in a transparent way. Which is that weird? But I think you get it. So thank you for that, confirming that yeah, I did not ask for a bounty. Did you offer a bounty?
No.
Great. Okay,
we don't do page. That's not our not interested in that world at all.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I realize that, I mean, there's a reality working in cryptocurrencies and working in blockchain projects that you still do need incentives for certain sides of the community, and people, the laborer is worthy of his hire, I think is to use if I can preach a little bit, use a biblical reference there, but yeah, I think that there are limits to that, right? You still need advocates. You need people that are genuinely convicted. And yeah, we'll just talk about it freely. But that out of the way, what is the best place online to find out more about Shade Protocol? Or in other words, where do you want people to go, and what do you want them to do when they get there?
100%. So I think shadeprotocol.io is going to be your best place to go ahead and check out the app, actually see what we've built, get your hands dirty. Separate from that, I would join on the website. If you scroll down on there, let's see, scroll down a little further. Oh, right there. Scroll up a little more right there. So the Telegram, Discord, and Twitter are all available. Social links. You can find, probably the best place is Shade_protocol on Twitter. That's where a lot of our key announcements go out. And then we have our Telegram and Discord groups. We link the Telegram in the Twitter profile actually too, to join us. So if you want to, we like to make ourselves very accessible. Shade Protocol on YouTube is also a great channel. There's lots of Twitter spaces that we've hosted, lots of great video resources on how to actually use it. And actually, we don't have our YouTube link down there. So I'm going to add that as a ticket internally to get YouTube added, because we should have a YouTube link there. But yeah, those are the places to it. And just be sure to ping me. Say you came from Seth's podcast. And I'm always happy to hop on calls with people, always happy to talk about risks, talk about our strategy, and ultimately about the why. Because I'll close with this from my end. This world of blockchain is headed towards kind of a fork in the road, where people are going to try to say that any amount of privacy is wrong, it's bad, it's evil. And I fundamentally reject that. Privacy is a utility. It's a basic human right. We actually need it for commerce. And so I refuse to not fight that battle. And so if you believe in privacy and what it represents, if you believe in sovereignty and freedom, then this is a community you want to join, because we're building very disruptive technology, and we will continue to build that disruptive technology no matter what happens to any of the builders, because no one can make a dream die unless all of us give up on it. And we're never going to give up on the value of privacy and freedom.
Amazing. Totally co-sign all of that. Appreciate your time. Mineyour.biz community, do please go follow all the links. You see many of them in the description, so you have zero excuses. It's a single click for you. But Carter, thank you so much for your time. And audience, let us know if you want to see an encore at any point in the future. And maybe we do it again.
Run it back. Have a good one, guys.